Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Evolving Vibes. Today's a full moon, and I was thinking about the full moon energy and some of the things that I might want to do with it. And one of the thoughts that popped up was, you've seen my daily tarot readings. I know a lot of you have looked at my Grimoire tour, as well as my altar tours, both my first one as well as my other altar. But one thing that popped up that was really kind of interesting to me is, I've never shown myself on YouTube, so you've never actually seen me. So here I am, my name is Brian, and welcome to my channel. I hope that you find some of the information I'm going to talk about today important and appropriate and resonating with you, because I'm going to be talking to you today about prompts for our grimoires, book of shadows, book of mirrors, journals, whatever you want to call it. But the reality of it is, I'm going to talk a bit about it, maybe come up with some ideas for you, show you some of the things that I do with my grimoire, and share information. If you do like this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, leave me a comment, as I'm growing my spiritual aspect of my channel. And so any ideas that you may want to see for spiritual type videos, feel free to comment and let me know. But for today, we're going to be talking about my grimoire and prompts for everyone's grimoires. So when we talk about a grimoire, some people take it to that next level where we can't talk about it, we can't show it, everything's very secretive, and everything that's in that is my own, and I'm not sharing it with everybody else. And that's fine. If that's your relationship with your grimoire, more power to you. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. One of the best parts about witchcraft and being a witch, and what I like about it, is the fact that there are no rules. You can do whatever you want to do with your own practice, and it's okay. If it resonates with you, if it vibes with your spirit, do it. So long as you're not harming anybody, and even if you are, who's to stop you except your own conscience? So that all being said, it's all about you, your karma, and what you want to do with your own personal practice. As for me and my practice, one of the things I do like to do is share, which is why I do free daily tarot readings for the energy of the day. It allows me to share the energy that I'm actually going to be using myself. It allows me to share the private reading I do for myself on what the energy I want to look at for the day, and some of the strategies I may want to come up with, keywords I like to think about as I get into my day. So all that being said, I'm about sharing, which is why I'll be sharing some of the information in my grimoire. Now, when we talk about grimoires, people call them books of shadows, they call them grimoires, they call them books of mirrors, a lot of different things. And guess what? All that's okay. It's all about you. You can call your book Francis. Who cares? It's you in your relationship with your book. Just as it's you in your relationship with your universe, your realm, and what it is it all means to you. So when we look at grimoires, the first thing I think about and I talk about is what really resonates with me, which is books in general. Books to me are the most magical entity ever created by man. And the reason I say that is it's lying still, it's dormant, it's at rest. What gives it life, what gives it energy, and what gives it magical powers is us and reading it. As we turn a page and we soak in that information, as we absorb into a fresh new world that we're not familiar with, that's very magical to me. And as we open up and use our intuition as well as imagination when we're reading about a story, again, that's really, really magical to me. So to me, a book is sacred, a book is magical, and a book means so much more than just pages between two bindings. And so it stands to reason, of course, that I have a very special relationship with my grimoire. And that's right, I call it a grimoire. Why? I don't know. It resonated with me. It's something that I've always called it, and it's something that I will always call it. So that's just me. However you do you, do it. So with the grimoire, in my personal grimoire, I have a very special relationship with it. I actually keep it in bed with me at night when I go to bed. Other than that, it's on my altar. One of the things I like to do, and I'm just going to bring my altar around back here, is let it rest during the day with a piece of selenite on it. It keeps it cleansed. To me, it makes it more empowering, and it keeps that energy that I have in it stored. But that's just me. You may use different stones, you may use no stones, and that's all about you and what works for you, right? So with the grimoire, in my personal grimoire, there's a couple of things I do like to do. And you've probably heard this before in other videos, because if you're like me, you've probably watched nearly every video on grimoires you could possibly find on YouTube. I know I have. If the video was more than 10-15 minutes long, I was on it and I watched it to completion. So I've watched a lot of different videos on grimoires, books of shadows, books of mirrors, journaling, that sort of thing. And one thing I do like is how each person takes it and makes it their own personal path and their own personal connection. Now for me, I have a couple of very special pens that I use for my grimoire. This pen is a sterling silver pen I got from Tiffany & Company probably around 10 years ago now. And I've used it for spell casting. I use it when I'm writing spells within my grimoire, and I use it on any new moon energy, intention work that I'm doing, full moon energy intention work, and any other type of spell casting I do. This doubles up as my wand in a lot of ways when I take it out with me to work or to my day-to-day. So this actually always rests on top of my grimoire during the day along with a piece of selenite. Now for my day-to-day entries in my grimoire, this excuse me, this is the pen that I use. I love the texture of the ink. I really enjoy how it feels on the paper, and I really enjoy how the paper feels after the ink has set on it. Now this pen itself you can buy at Walmart or any other store. This particular pen I've had over a couple of years now, but what I usually do is I just buy fresh new inserts for it and maintain the pen and keep the pen. And this pen always stays on my altar. I don't take it out with me unless I'm planning on doing some grimoire work at the park, in the woods, wherever it might be. But other than that, these are my two primary pens that I use for my grimoire. And if you use multiple pens, great. If you don't use any pens in particular, also great. Now for my grimoire, as I said in my other video, this is something that's very special to me because it was given to me by my sister. And my sister follows a path as well, a little bit different than mine, but she does a lot of crystal work and a lot of spell work in her own way. When she gave me this book, well, when I saw this book, I fell in love with it. And when she bought it for me for my birthday, it was amazing. So one of the things I do have on my book, and you can probably see it, is a little bit of spell work written in the Theban alphabet. This way no one else can read it. It's very personal to me, and I know what it means, no one else does. Now with my grimoire, I did customize it in a couple of different ways. It didn't come with any type of page keepers or bookmarks. So what I did is I took one piece of black hemp string and tied it up at the top as well as the bottom down here, and that secured it right over here where we have all the stitching work done. And then after that, all I did was tie off right up here other hemp string that attaches itself to other page markers. And that's how I mark my pages. I love it. It works for me. And each one of those crystals is something from my own personal collection. And I really cherish, love, and it's all about the energy that it has for me. Same thing goes with these little charms. Each one of these little charms, whether it be this key, this Asian token, or anything else, resonates with me. It means something to me. So when I first started using this book, it was very special to me, obviously, and it still is because my sister gave it to me. The biggest problem I had with, I couldn't work in it because I was afraid of ruining it, of making mistakes and doing things that I wasn't really going to be happy with, and changing the vibe of the book and changing the way I felt about it. And I know from what I've seen with the YouTube videos, a lot of people feel that way. Now, I took some time to overcome my fear. And one of the things that really brought me to it is, listen, I spellcast all the time. I do tarot readings all the time. I make mistakes all the time. It's part of the human experience. So in something that's going to be so spiritually close to me and so spiritually connected to me, who cares about the imperfections? What is nature if not perfectly imperfect? What are we if we're not perfectly imperfect? So what is the matter with our grimoires being perfectly imperfect? I think a lot of us, for the lack of a better word, really became brainwashed or snowed by watching some of these witchy shows, which showed these perfect grimoires, perfectly written, spellbound and opened up with this perfect penmanship and being able to read each spell, each prompt perfectly. The reality of it is, that's not life, that's Hollywood. I can promise you, if we were able to go back in history and look at some of the other grimoires that were out there, they weren't perfect. They had errors in them. They had cross-out marks. They had pages crossed out. None of that really matters, because what really matters is the energy that we're putting into this, the life we give this book by infusing it with our own energy. Now, some of the other prompts that I wanted to bring up is the fact of how we enter into our grimoires. Now, there are people that go on the internet, find things that resonate with them. They download it or they print it out and they put it into their grimoire. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what resonates with you, have at it. Keep up the good work. So long as you work in your grimoire, I think that's the most important thing. Personally, for me, I like handwriting into my grimoire for a lot of different reasons. One of the major reasons is, even as a child, I used to like to write things down. I always kept some form of journal. I always kept some form of written aspect for my day, for my thoughts, for my feelings. And working in my grimoire, by writing it at my hand, just came natural to me. Now, some people say I only write in the grimoire when I use a fountain pen or a quill and ink pen. And that's fine too. I have done that on occasion. What I did find out though from using the pen and quill, the quill and ink aspect, or the fountain pen, is I wasn't really happy with the quality of the ink. It seemed a little watery and runny to me, number one. Number two, it takes a significant amount of time to write in a book when you're using a pen and quill method, because you keep having to go back to that ink and keep having to go back and dab. With the fountain pen, it's a little bit quicker, but again, I wasn't really fond of the quality of how the ink is somewhat watery. Along with that, I use my book a lot with spell work. I use my book going outside and doing spell work. I use it at my altar, like tonight for a full moon, to do some spell work. When I'm working with spells, obviously we're working with air, water, fire, earth, all of the elements. So when we're working with water or oil and you're using a fountain pen type ink, it doesn't really hold up so well on the pages. When you're using a regular pen such as this, or a gel ink pen such as this, you can spill water on it. You can get drops of water on it. You can get drops of rain on it. No problem, no issue. It just adds to the character without displacing the ink. So that's where I drew back from using a pen and quill, or a fountain pen and quill and ink. Having a problem there with remembering those two terms. Now, if I'm doing very specific spell work and I'm not using this pen, I will use my quill and ink pen for very specific spell work with very specific ink for that spell that I've actually put together. That's a little bit different than the everyday, if you will, ritual type spell where you're writing things down just to burn into the energy into the universe, or to hold on to it for a period of time before sending it out into the universe. But that's all up to you, and it's really all up to what resonates with you. Now, some of the other ways I enter into my book, and I'll show you, I do customize it. One of the things I do is I have two types of paper that I'm pulling out of my book right now. And I'll tell you about them. So, the first style of paper is just literally just a white pad of paper. What I've done with it is I've taken some herbs, taking some very specific tea herbs and some coffee grounds, mixed it all together, let it heat up, and then when it cools down, I just dip my paper in it, get it saturated, and then I just put it on a heated surface to dry. I don't put it in the oven. Some people do, and that's fine. I've been doing this in the winter time, so it's going on a heated surface to dry out. Electric radiated to be specific. However, when I do some more for the summer season and autumn season, and obviously spring season, it's going to go outside in the sunlight and dry. Just in New England, we don't have a strong enough sunlight to dry the paper all that well in the winter time. So this is the type of paper I use to add things into my grimoire, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. This paper comes out of sketchbooks. Just a black sketchbook that you can buy at Michael's, Walmart, anywhere. I do the same treatment with it where I'll use specific herbs and teas as well as coffee grounds to actually make this paper. And you can hear how it sounds very much like parchment. It feels like parchment. For all intents and purposes, it is parchment. Now, with this paper, what I do is I use it for spell work. I'll write my intentions down or the spell in general down, and then I'll seal it up and I'll hold it for X amount of time, or I'll transfer the energy into the universe by burning it. And I'll show you an example of how I dress it up and keep it until the next moon cycle, if you will, in just a few minutes. So some of the prompts that you can come up with for your grimoire, if you will, is just that. If you've noticed, I actually have an envelope that I put together which holds both styles of paper on my front cover. This is my protective sigil that I use for a lot of different things, including my grimoire. Now, I told you about cutting and pasting and all of that. I do that here and there. This is a picture that really resonated with me, and so I did cut it out and I did post it in the beginning of my grimoire, and I do use it time to time for meditation. And this is my intentions on this side as it's all spelled out and posted. So some of the things that you can do with your grimoire to make it your own are things like that. Some other things you can do with it, I'll put things in it that resonate with you. One thing I do have in it is obviously the Theban script or alphabet. Along with that, the goals of a witch. I found those really cool. They resonate with me, so they made it in my book. So there's no rules about what needs to go in your grimoire versus what can only go into another book. You can make it your own by putting anything that you want to put into it. I do a lot of work with tarot, both with readings as well as with magic. So it was only natural for me to put a tarot magic aspect in my book. And it goes into various things that you can do with tarot, as well as various ways of working with tarot. And I do love reading, and I do love inspiration. So in my book, there's all these inspirational quotes that really hit me, that resonate with me. And I go through my book sometimes, if for nothing else, just to read different quotes because it speaks to my spirit and speaks to my soul. Some of the other things that you can do, I'll find different clippings from different areas that really resonate with you, and feel free to put them in your book as well as different quotes around it, which is what I did there. There's a lot of different ways for you to make this your own book. Now, these right here came out of the 2020 Witches Calendar book that I had. 2021, I no longer needed it, so I went through and took out some of the illustrations that I really liked throughout the year and placed them in my book. Something you can do easily, something you can do to make it your own. Now, I do a lot with herbs. I do a lot with spell work with herbs, but along with that, I do make my own herbal teas. So it would be only natural for me to include a pretty large section on herbs and magical uses of herbs, which is what you'll find here. These are all different types of herbs, and it's quite a few pages long, but it's all about herbal magic and about what I do with it. Now, I talked to you about these small pieces of paper and how I utilize them. So, when I do find more information on a topic that I've already covered somewhere in my book, one of the things I do is take it and I paste it in, and voila, it's an additional page with the topics that I'm very specifically talking about. Now, there's a couple of things I did learn through trial and error that works for me that you may want to consider. So when I first started using different aspects to put into my book, one of the things I was using was glue. I would just go on to the back, wipe it all down, make sure it all stayed purple, and try to get it on the page where I want it on the page before that purple turned clear. Because if you use this, one thing you do know is once this purple turns clear, the pasting properties pretty much gone away. It's dried up. So I use this quite a lot. One thing I found with it, humidity, moisture, heat, all that has a pretty big impact on it, and it starts to fall apart, it starts to dry up, and I just didn't like the way it was working on my grimoire. So one of my favorite things to use is this right here, this double-sided tape. You can get the refills for it, and basically all you do is just put it on a piece of paper and run it across. When you're finished with the area that you want to fix down, just lift it up and it stays. And for pictures and illustrations, I do all four sides, and then I put it in, and it stays there forever. Now, to add things to my grimoire, I use this same technique for the back, the very top edge of my paper. And what happens with that? It turns into a sticky note. So I can put it anywhere I want in my book. If I want to take it out for spell work, I can, and then replace it. If I want to move it around in my book, I can do that as well. But it works really well, and the Elmer's one, for me, has been the best quality one. The inserts are refillable, of course, and you get 3 in a pack for like $6 or $7, but it's well worth it. The other two aspects that I have, because I ran out of that and I couldn't find it, this is one of them. This one is okay, but it's glue dots, and so it's a little bit more problematic. What I did find, though, with the glue dots as well as the staple scotch tape is the fact that they don't work very well for sticky notes. In other words, you put it down, this is nearly impossible to pick up without damaging the paper or the page, and so is this. Now, this larger piece that I talked to you about that I get out of sketchbooks, and I change the texture with my herbs and my coffee grounds, I must warn you, don't try to use the double-edged tape on it. Don't try to put it in your grimoire with the dots, double-edged tape, any of that, because it becomes quite the mess. First off, you're not going to be able to get it to stick to this surface. As you're putting the tape down and rolling it, it's not adhering, or I should say, it's adhering too much, and it's tearing up the paper, so it doesn't work very well. Which is why this is relegated very specifically for my spell work and for things that I'm going to put out into the universe by burning. It works really well for that. So some of the other things that you may want to put into your book, it's up to you, is, as I said, I do a lot with tarot. So I had an old tarot deck that really didn't resonate with me any longer. So I put them inside the book with my meanings of the tarot, my thoughts on it, the shadow work that I do with it, as well as the keywords that I like to have for that specific tarot card. And I go to that almost daily, if you will, for a lot of different reasons. Now, some other things that I do have in my book, maybe you want to add into yours, maybe you won't, it's all up to you. Because I do tarot, And because of my spiritual path, I really resonated with the Hermetic Principles. Therefore, all the Hermetic Principles are inside my book, as well as my thoughts on them and what they mean to me. And that's one of the things I do share quite a lot with friends. Sometimes it's even just taking a picture of the page and sending it to a friend that I think might need it. I also have the Astrological Keys in my book. So it goes into the astrological signs, it goes into the elemental correspondence with it. I actually had the glyphs of each sign that I handwritten into it, and some other aspects of it that resonated with me. And I use that quite a lot when I'm doing very specific types of readings for people. Now, the other aspect of my book is my recipes and spells. So I have a cornucopia, if you will, of recipes and spells. I have 4 Thieves vinegar recipe that I use exclusively. I'm probably going to set up another video on 4 Thieves vinegar making. If that's something that you want to see, be sure to leave a comment below and I'll definitely put that together. Same thing goes with my own Florida water recipe that I make for myself. Now, again, if that's a recipe that you want to see me make a video out of, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'll be glad to do it. I have a ton of different types of essential oil recipes. I am not even going to bore you with the pages of them, but rest assured, there is a lot of them, and I've added to them, as you can see, by that little page right there. Some of the other things that I've actually put into this with recipes and mixes are my inks that I use. My Dragon's Blood ink, my Bat's Blood ink, and my Dove's Blood ink. One thing to remember about any ink that has blood in the title, it doesn't actually include blood. So there's no blood of any one of these animals, well, especially dragons, right? Inside of my recipes, of course. I also have, again, going over my recipes and mixes, I have multiple pages of tea blends that I make. These are all different blends that I actually make myself. I take my book, go into the kitchen, and recreate my tea using my recipes. Along with that, I do have charms that I make, and so these are all ingredients for my charm bags that I make for friends, for myself, for people in general. One thing that really resonates with me as a witch are trees. I love trees. I have a very special relationship with trees. There's one tree in my yard that I really go to quite a lot and just meditate onto and sometimes just talk to. And so it was important for me to include in my book tree lore. So that's another thing that you can actually put into your book. You can go online and research tree laws and actually take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. Now, I'm a Virgo, which means I'm an earth sign. So I do a lot with earth energy, and I do a lot with stones, both rocks as well as crystals. So I do have a really big, expansive collection of crystal meanings and what we would use them for. And again, something you can add into your book. I do a lot with different types of spell work, which is really simple. Henceforth, why I have a lot of different types of diagrams and drawings in my book as well. Now, before you get started and like, oh, I don't want to do spell work with drawings because I suck as an artist. Let me tell you, I'm horrible as a drawer. But to me, it's okay. Because, again, remember that phrase, perfectly imperfect. So my drawings may not come out where you're going to be museum quality, but it means something to me. Because I'm putting it in my grimoire, it's infusing that book with my energy. My perfect imperfections go into that book, and that's what makes it my own, right? Same thing goes for you. Don't mind me, I'm going to have a little bit of coffee. Now, another aspect of the book that I've got into mine are all of our rituals for each one of our Sabbaths. So each one of the 8 Sabbats is listed in here. I actually went out and I was able to find the sigil, if you will, that would be corresponding with that specific Sabbath, and so that's listed in here as well. And for me, it ends with Samhain, because that's pretty much the end of the 8 Sabbats. It's the beginning of the Witch's New Year. So I do have spells and rituals. So I've got my new moon ritual that I follow right here. Along with that, I've got my full moon ritual, which I'll be doing tonight. Now, my last new moon, I did a ritual which included this right here. Remember this large piece of paper that I put my intentions on? Here it is. So what I do with these after I've put my intentions in and I've really focused my energy into it is I seal it up with a wax seal. I have got dozens of different types of wax seals and dozens of different types of wax to make a seal out of. So it was sealed up and it was placed in my grimoire last full new moon for tonight's full moon. And I'll follow through my workings with this intention by setting it off into the universe later on tonight with that full moon energy. Again, some of the things that you can actually do with your grimoire. And I got a lot of different types of spells. When I found something that worked even better, or I found something that resonated under that same category of spells, I just added it into that area and into that page. I do a lot of scrying as well as divination with tarot, and I also use my pendulum. So one of the things I did was created a page for my pendulum where I can do my scrying with it. Now, one of the things I did with my book marks is make one into my pendulum. So it's obviously marking the page that has my pendulum work sheet that I use, and that's where I keep my pendulum, in my grimoire, in that area. Abracadabra really resonated with me, so that actually made it into my book. Along with that, Avada Kedavra really resonates with me as well, so that made it into my book. And as I said, each one of us is different, so don't feel like you have to follow any one person's advice in doing it. And as I said before about not being a perfect artist, here's a bunch of drawings that I made in my book. They're not perfect, but they're mine, and it's my energy, so I'm glad with it. I love the way it looks, and I go to this page quite a bit when I want to use those symbols in my spell work and in my everyday life. So this video, if you will, is all about you. It's all about your relationship with your own grimoire. It doesn't belong to anybody else. It is yours. Now, I will say that if you're part of a coven, which I am not, but if you're part of a coven, the coven probably has a coven grimoire, and part of being a new witch and being a part of that coven, or a new member of that coven, is probably copying the coven's grimoire into your own personal copy of that. Now, that being said, if you are part of a coven, if you do belong to a coven family, all the more power to you, and I hope you love and enjoy it, and I'm sure you do. That's why you're part of it. But that doesn't mean you still can't have your own personal grimoire, unless there's a coven rule against it. If there is, then follow your coven rules. But from a personal, practical standpoint, you can certainly have your own grimoire infused with your own energy and your own magical spells, so long as it's your own personal grimoire and you're not copying coven material into it, because obviously I would imagine that would go against coven rules. So that all being said, make it your own, make it fun for you, and don't be stressed out by it. Now, I do have errors and mistakes in my book. I call them happy accidents. And what I do with those is either leave them or I paste the page over them and move forward. These work great for that. Other paper works great for that. Whatever way you want to do it, you can certainly paste over a page if it's an error or no longer resonates with you, and make it into something you want differently. I've done that with pictures. I've made some errors on pages, so I found different pictures to paste over those happy little accidents, and I just moved on with my life. But reality is, this is my grimoire. Perfect, imperfect, it's me, and it's infused with my energy, and it's exactly the way I want it to be. Now, some people go out and they spend a lot of money on grimoires, and they make their own. I should say they spend a lot of money on grimoires, period, and or they make their own. And that's fine to do as well, whatever works for you. Now, my grimoire, I wanted to be really simple. Now, some of the witchy grimoires that have pentacles on it, tree of life on it, and some other things on it, some other witchy symbols, really do resonate with me, and I find them adoring, and I really love them. But I go out a lot with my book, so I wanted something a little bit low-key, something that was very simple, had to be leather. That was my must. It must definitely be leather, and something that I could just carry around and be low-key. I don't have to have a whole display acknowledging that I'm a witch, or freak people out by the pentacle, because there still are a lot of people out there that are pretty ignorant to the fact of what a pentacle actually means. So this, to me, worked out perfectly. I can carry it by my side, I can put it in my backpack, I can pull it out at the beach, at the park, anywhere I might be at, and work in it, collect some things, because I'm big on collecting leaves and reeds and things of that nature, and putting them inside the grimoire to take back home with me. So, I do hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to keep it around 40 minutes or so, and I'm thinking I'm just about there. And if you did like this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment. If there are other videos you want me to put together, give me some ideas. Like I said, I'm looking at doing the Four Thieves vinegar, as well as a couple of other types of videos with flower water and even making your own holy water. But all that being said, give me some ideas or let me know with feedback if you like the idea of doing the Four Thieves vinegar step by step with my own recipe. Same thing goes with the flower water, step by step with my own recipe. So I do hope you enjoyed everything, and as always, I do want you to be safe, be well, and always, always, always be blessed. So until next video, have a great full moon, really embrace this full moon energy, and enjoy your witchy life and your spiritual self. Blessings.